The galaxy was a quiet place, or at least, that is what the Galactic Hegemony believed. For thousands of years, the Hegemony, a massive alliance of hundreds of alien races, had ruled the stars. They were technologically advanced, elegant, and very, very arrogant. To them, the universe was a solved puzzle. Everything had its place. On the bridge of the Xylos, a massive scavenger ship, Captain Vrex paced back and forth. Vrex was a Kroll, a creature with 4 eyes and skin like polished obsidian. His ship was currently drifting near the Void Zone, a dark, empty patch of space that no one ever visited. "Captain," a voice chirped. It was Kale, the ship's sensor officer. Kale was small and spindly, with long fingers perfect for typing on holographic screens. "I have found something. It is strange." Vrex leaned over the console. "Is it an asteroid? A dead moon?" "No," Kale whispered, his eyes wide. "It is a ship, but it does not look like any ship I have ever seen. It is made of crude, heavy steel. There are no energy shields. There are no elegant curves. It looks like a box of metal thrown into the stars." On the main screen, the object appeared. It was small compared to the Xylos, scarred by thousands of tiny meteor impacts. On its side, faded and scratched, was a symbol, a small blue and white circle. "It is a myth," Kale said, his voice trembling. "The legends of the third planet. The stories our ancestors told us about the bipeds who lived in the dark. The humans." Captain Vrex laughed. It was a dry, clicking sound. "Humans? Don't be a child, Kale. Humans are a bedtime story. They are monsters used to scare young pilots into staying within the trade routes. They aren't real. That ship is just ancient junk from a dead civilization." Vrex signaled his crew. "Bring it into the cargo bay. If it's old metal, we can melt it for credits." The Xylos extended its massive tractor beams. The small, boxy ship was pulled slowly into the glowing maw of the scavenger vessel. As the heavy hangar doors hissed shut, a strange feeling washed over the crew. The air felt heavy. The lights on the Xylos, the most advanced lights in the sector, flickered for a split second. "Report," Vrex shouted into his comms. "Minor power surge, Captain," the engineer replied. "Probably just the magnetic interference from that old hunk of junk. Nothing to worry about." But it was something to worry about. Down in the cargo bay, the air was cold. The alien security team stood around the human ship, holding their plasma rifles. They were elite warriors, 8 feet tall and covered in thick scales. They poked at the metal hull of the human craft. "Look at this," one guard joked, pointing at a primitive hatch. "You have to turn a wheel to open it. How did they think they could travel the stars with manual doors?" Suddenly, the wheel turned. It didn't turn because of a motor. It turned with a slow, grinding screech of metal on metal. The guards froze. Their plasma rifles hummed as they aimed at the hatch. Asterisk clang. Asterisk. The door fell open, hitting the floor of the Xylos with a heavy thud. For a long moment, nothing happened. Only a thin, white mist curled out from the dark interior of the human ship. Then there was a sound. Asterisk thump. 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 Asterisk. It was the sound of heavy boots hitting the deck. From the shadows, a figure emerged. It was not a giant. It was not covered in scales. It wore a bulky, battered suit of gray armor. A thick glass visor covered its face. It stood only 6 feet tall, tiny compared to the alien guards. "Freeze!" The guard captain barked. "Identify yourself, creature." The human didn't move. It didn't speak. It just stood there, looking at them. Through the glass of the helmet, the aliens could see 2 eyes. They weren't glowing or magical. They were just eyes deep, focused, and completely unafraid. Then the lights went out. The entire cargo bay plunged into pitch-black darkness. This was impossible. The Xylos had 3 backup generators, but for the first time in history, the perfect alien technology had failed. In the dark, the aliens heard things. They heard the sound of metal snapping. They heard the whoosh of air moving fast. They heard the sound of their own high-tech armor being crumpled like paper. There were no screams, only the sounds of a professional at work. When the emergency red lights finally flickered on 3 minutes later, the cargo bay was a scene of confusion. The elite security team was not dead. They were all alive, but they were incapacitated. Their weapons had been crushed. Their armor had been stripped off. They were piled in the corner of the room. tied together with their own utility cables. And the human, he was gone. Up on the bridge, Captain Vrex watched the monitor in horror. He saw the empty cargo bay. He saw his unbeatable guards lying like helpless dolls on the floor. "Kale," Vrex whispered, his obsidian skin turning a pale gray. "Scan the ship. Find out where it went." Kale's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Captain, I can't find it. It's moving through the ventilation shafts. It's moving too fast for the sensors to lock on. It's like it knows our ship better than we do." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Suddenly, the main computer screen changed. The star maps disappeared. The status reports vanished. In their place, a single line of text appeared in the Galactic common language. "You should not have pulled us in." At that moment, the crew of the Xylos realized the legends were wrong. Humans weren't just real. They were something much worse. They were a nightmare that had finally woken up. The bridge of the Xylos was no longer a place of command. It had become a cage of fear. Captain Vrex stared at the message on his screen. Those 7 words, "You should not have pulled us in," felt like a death sentence. Around him, his bridge crew were panicking. These were beings who had conquered gravity and harnessed the power of suns, yet they were terrified of a single creature moving through their vents. "Seal the bridge," Vrex roared, his 4 eyes twitching in different directions. "Activate the internal defense turrets. I want every corridor flooded with stun gas." "Captain," Kale stammered, his spindly fingers trembling over the console. "The defense turrets, they aren't responding." The human didn't just hide. He uploaded a virus. He locked us out of our own security network. And the gas vents, they've been physically welded shut from the inside. Vrex felt a cold shiver run down his obsidian spine. This wasn't how primitive myths were supposed to behave. In the stories, humans were strong, yes, but they were supposed to be loud and violent. This was different. This was surgical. This was the behavior of a species that had spent its entire history learning how to break things. Deep within the maintenance levels of the ship, the human, whose name was Elias, moved with a grace that defied his bulky armor. To the aliens, the Xylos was a masterpiece of engineering. To Elias, it was just a series of pipes, wires, and structural weak points. He wasn't looking to kill the crew. He was looking for the heart. Every Hegemony ship had one central processing core that managed the life support and navigation. Elias reached a heavy blast door. Instead of using explosives, which would alert the entire ship, he pulled a small, humming device from his belt. It was a thermal cutter, a tool meant for ship repairs, but in his hands, it was a master key. He began to cut through the door with a steady, practiced hand. He knew he only had minutes before the aliens sent their secondary security wave, the Iron Sentinels, heavy robotic combat units. On the bridge, Vrex saw a small red light blink on his tactical map. He asked at the secondary reactor. "If he shuts that down, we lose all propulsion. Send the Sentinels. Now." 3 massive robots, each a ton of reinforced alloy and bristling with laser cannons, stomped toward the maintenance level. They were programmed to identify and eliminate any biological threat. They didn't feel fear, and they didn't miss. The audience sees the confrontation through the ship's grainy emergency cameras. The Sentinels turned the corner, their sensors locking onto the gray-armored figure. They opened fire. The narrow corridor is filled with blinding blue light as lasers scorch the walls. But the human isn't there. Elias had used the low-gravity environment of the maintenance shaft to push himself onto the ceiling. As the robots passed underneath him, he dropped down like a stone. He didn't use a gun. He jammed a heavy steel crowbar, a tool as old as humanity itself, directly into the neck joint of the leading robot. With a grunt of pure physical power, he twisted. The metal screeched, sparks flew, and the ton-heavy machine slumped to the floor, its circuits fried. The other 2 robots spun around, but Elias was already moving. He used the fallen robot as a shield, pushing it forward with incredible leg strength. He closed the distance before they could recalibrate. He didn't fight them like a warrior. He fought them like a mechanic dismantling a faulty engine. Within 60 seconds, 3 of the Hegemony's most advanced combat drones were nothing but piles of expensive scrap metal. The crew on the bridge watched in total silence. Kale finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. He destroyed them with a piece of iron. Captain, his biology is impossible. Our sensors are finally getting a reading through the suit. His bone density is 4 times the galactic average. His muscles are under so much tension, they react faster than our processors can track. It's like he is built for a planet with triple our gravity. It's not just his body, Vrex said, his voice heavy with a realization he didn't want to admit. It's his mind. Look at the way he moves. He isn't guessing. He knows where our weak spots are. He is studying us as much as we're studying him. Elias finally reached the reactor core. He didn't blow it up. Instead, he pulled out a small communication device. He tuned it to the ship's wide-frequency broadcast. This is Elias Thorne of the United Soul Rescue Division. His voice echoed through every speaker on the Xylos. It was a deep, calm voice. It didn't sound like a monster. It sounded like a tired man who wanted to go home. You intercepted a civilian distress beacon and responded with a tractor beam. That is considered an act of aggression under Soul law. I have disabled your weapons and your security. I am currently holding your reactor core in my hand. Captain Vrex grabbed the comms. You are one creature. We have 300 soldiers on this ship. You cannot win. There was a short pause on the other end. I'm not trying to win a war, Captain, Elias replied. I'm just a scout. I was sent to see if this sector was safe for our colony ships. I told my people that if I didn't check in every hour, they should come looking for me. Elias looked up at the camera, his visor reflecting the red glow of the reactor. It's been 59 minutes. Look at your long-range scanners. Kale's hands flew over the controls. He pushed the sensors to their absolute limit, peering deep into the void zone. His face went completely white. Captain, I have multiple warp signatures. High mass. Very high mass. How many? Vrex demanded. 12. No, 24, Kale gasped. They aren't coming from the trade routes. They are coming from the void itself. They are huge, Captain. They make the Xylos look like a toy. On the bridge's main view screen, the darkness of space began to ripple. Space-time itself seemed to tear open. Out of the nothingness emerged ships that looked like jagged mountains made of steel and fire. They didn't have the elegant lights of the Hegemony. They were dark, silent, and covered in weapon batteries. The myth was no longer a story. The myth had arrived in force. And as the giant human ships surrounded the Xylos, the alien crew realized the most terrifying thing of all. The human on their ship wasn't a warrior. He was just the one they sent to be polite. The bridge of the Xylos felt like a tomb. Outside the view screen, the massive, jagged ships of the human fleet hung in the void like silent predators. They didn't broadcast music. They didn't send greetings. And they didn't glow with pretty lights. They were matte black giants that absorbed the starlight around them. Captain Vrex stood frozen. His 4 eyes were fixed on the sensor readings. Kale, he whispered, tell me those readings are a glitch. Tell me those ships aren't made of solid hull plating. Kale's voice was trembling so hard he could barely speak. Captain, it's not a glitch. Those ships, they don't use energy shields like we do. They don't need them. Their armor is so thick that our plasma cannons would just splash off the surface like water. They are built for kinetic warfare. They don't want to dance in space. They want to collide. Suddenly, the bridge doors hissed open. The crew jumped, expecting the armored human, Elias, to come charging in with his metal bar. Instead, a holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the room. It was an image of a woman in a crisp, dark blue uniform. She looked calm, her gray hair pulled back tightly. I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the Soul Heavy Response Fleet, the hologram said. Her voice was steady, lacking the high-pitched emotional frequency of the Kroll language. You are currently holding one of our deep space scouts and his vessel. Release him immediately, or we will begin structural disassembly of your craft. Vrex found his courage, though his knees were shaking. Admiral, your scout invaded our cargo bay. He has sabotaged our systems and assaulted our guards. Under Galactic Hegemony law, he is a prisoner of war. Admiral Chen didn't look angry. She looked pitying. Captain, you are operating on a very dangerous misunderstanding. You think you are the ones in control because you have more ships in this sector. But you are looking at rules while we are looking at physics. My scout didn't invade you. You trapped a wolf in a cage made of glass. And now you are complaining that the glass is breaking. We have 300 armed soldiers. Vrex screamed, gesturing to the monitors. "We can destroy your scout in a second. Go ahead and try," the Admiral said coolly. "But I should warn you. If Elias Thorne's heart rate stops, every ship in my fleet is programmed to fire their relativistic kill vehicles. We won't just destroy your ship. We will erase the orbital path you are standing on." The hologram vanished. Vrex turned to his remaining security chief. "Kill him. I don't care about the Admiral's threats. No single creature can be this important. Kill the human and prepare the warp engines for a blind jump." Down in the reactor core, Elias heard the heavy footsteps of the secondary security wave. This time, they weren't sending robots. They were sending the Hegemony Elite's warriors from the volcanic moons of Ignis. They were covered in natural bone plate and carried heavy heat blades that could cut through diamonds. Elias didn't panic. He reached into a small compartment on his leg armor and pulled out a simple, clear tube filled with a bright red liquid. He injected it into his arm. In the medical bays of the Xylos, the alien doctors watching the remote bioscans gasped. His adrenaline levels just spiked by 500%. One cried, "His heart is beating so fast it should explode. His body temperature is rising to levels that would cook our organs." But Elias wasn't cooking. He was accelerating. When the Ignis warriors burst into the room, they expected a fight. What they got was a blur. Elias moved with a speed that the alien nervous systems couldn't even process. To the aliens, it looked like he was teleporting. A heat blade swung toward his head. Elias didn't dodge. He caught the warrior's wrist. The sound of bones snapping echoed through the chamber. Elias used the warrior's own momentum to throw the 400-pound creature across the room like a toy. He wasn't using fancy martial arts. He was using the raw, terrifying power of a body evolved for high-gravity combat, now boosted by human chemistry. He picked up one of the dropped heat blades. He didn't know how to use it, so he just used it like a hammer. He smashed through the Ignis warriors' bone plating with sheer brute force. Within 3 minutes, the elite squad was a pile of broken armor and groaning aliens. Elias stood in the center of the room, steam literally rising from his armor as his body worked to cool itself down. He looked at the security camera and pointed the heat blade at it. He didn't say a word, but the message was clear. Asterisk, is that all you have? Asterisk. On the bridge, Vrex watched the feed in horror. He realized his fatal mistake. The Hegemony had spent 10,000 years perfecting technology to make life easy. They had become soft. They fought with buttons and beams. But humans? Humans had spent their history fighting the environment, fighting predators, and fighting each other. Evolution hadn't made them elegant. It had made them unstoppable. "Captain," Kale whispered, pointing at the long-range scanners. "The human fleet. They are moving." "Are they firing?" Vrex asked, his voice cracking. "No," Kale said, his eyes wide with a new kind of terror. "They aren't firing weapons. They are launching harpoons. Giant magnetic cables. Captain, they aren't going to shoot us. They're going to reel us in like a fish." The Xylos jolted violently as the first massive human cable slammed into the hull. The sound of metal screaming filled the ship. The myth wasn't just in the vents anymore. The myth was pulling them into the dark, and there was nowhere left to hide. Xylos groaned under the pressure of the magnetic cables. On the bridge, the floor tilted at a sharp angle. Sparks showered from the ceiling as the human fleet began to reel in the massive alien ship. It was a display of raw, mechanical power that the Hegemony had never witnessed. Most galactic wars were fought with elegant energy beams from a distance. This was different. This was a physical struggle, like a giant predator pulling a smaller one into its mouth. "Captain, the structural integrity of the hull is failing," Kale screamed, clinging to his console. "The human cables are creating massive gravitational stress. They aren't just holding us. They are reshaping the ship." Captain Vrex didn't answer. He was watching the tactical feed from the reactor room. He saw Elias, the lone human scout, walking toward the primary life support controls. Elias wasn't running anymore. He walked with the heavy, steady pace of someone who knew the fight was already over. Vrex grabbed the intercom. "All remaining units, abandon your posts. Go to the reactor level. Use everything. Explosives, poison, fire, destroy that creature." But the crew was no longer listening. Panic had spread through the Xylos like a virus. The stories of the unstoppable humans were no longer myths told to children. They were reality. Alien soldiers threw down their weapons and ran for the escape pods, only to find that the pods had been remotely locked by Elias' virus. Down in the heart of the ship, Elias reached the main life support hub. He wasn't there to kill the air supply. He was there to send a signal. He opened a panel and found the ship's internal black box. With a few quick movements, he connected his gauntlet to the system. He began to download everything. The Hegemony's star charts, their military codes, and their history. Suddenly, the doors behind him exploded. A group of void stalkers, the Hegemony's most secretive assassins, emerged from the smoke. They didn't use loud weapons. They used cloaking technology and poison needles. They were invisible to the naked eye. They moved silently, circling Elias like shadows. Elias stopped what he was doing. He stood perfectly still. He closed his eyes. The audience sees the scene shift to the human-esque perspective. Humans might not have 4 eyes or infrared vision, but they have something else, spatial awareness. Elias listened to the sound of the air moving. He felt the vibration of the footsteps on the metal floor. An assassin lunged with a poisoned blade. Elias didn't look. He simply leaned 2 inches to the left. The blade hissed past his helmet. In one fluid motion, Elias grabbed the invisible arm and slammed the assassin into the wall. The cloaking device short-circuited, revealing a terrified, lizard-like creature. "You rely too much on your toys," Elias muttered. His voice was projected through his helmet speakers, sounding like grinding stones. He didn't wait for the others to strike. He pulled 2 small spheres from his belt and dropped them. They weren't grenades. They were sonic disruptors. A high-pitched frequency shattered the air. To a human, it was just an annoying noise. To the sensitive, alien ears of the void stalkers, it was agony. They collapsed, clutching their heads as their cloaking fields flickered and died. Elias finished the download. Data secured. He whispered into his comms. "Copy that, Scout." Admiral Chen's voice replied, clear and cold. "We are initiating the boarding sequence. Stand back from the hangar doors." On the bridge, Vrex heard a sound that made his obsidian skin turn white. It wasn't the sound of a laser or an explosion. It was the sound of cutting. The human ships had pulled the Xylos so close that their hulls were touching. Now they were using massive, industrial saws to cut directly through the Xylos' thickest armor. The Hegemony spent billions on unbreakable alloys. The humans didn't care. They simply used more friction and more heat. "They are coming in," Kale whispered, staring at the bridge doors. The heavy blast doors of the bridge didn't just open. They were ripped off their hinges by a mechanical claw. A squad of human breachers stepped inside. They were massive, wearing power armor that made them look like walking tanks. Each one carried a kinetic shotgun, a weapon that fired solid slugs of metal. They didn't fire. They didn't have to. The sight of 20 armored giants standing in the room was enough. Captain Vrex sat back in his chair, defeated. "Why?" he asked, his voice trembling. "We are the Hegemony. We are the masters of the galaxy. You are just savages from the void. How can you be this strong?" One of the breachers stepped forward and removed his helmet. He was a young man with a scarred face and a tired smile. "We aren't stronger than you," the soldier said in simple English. "We just never had the luxury of being soft. On Earth, everything tries to kill you: the weather, the animals, even the germs. To survive our home planet, we had to become unbeatable. By the time we reached the stars, we were already the toughest things in the dark." Elias walked onto the bridge, his gray armor covered in alien dust and scorch marks. He looked at Vrex, then at the star map on the screen. "You made a mistake, Captain," Elias said. "You thought we were a myth because we stayed in the void. We didn't stay there because we were hiding. We stayed there because we wanted to be left alone." The soldier pointed to the massive human fleet outside. "But now you know we are real. And now, the rest of the galaxy is going to find out too." As the human soldiers began to take control of the bridge, Kale looked at the sensor screen one last time. He saw thousands of more signatures appearing on the edge of the system. It wasn't just a fleet. It was a migration. The humans were moving, and the galaxy was about to change forever. Xylos was no longer a ship. It was a captured prize. Throughout the corridors, The sound of heavy human boots replaced the frantic scurrying of alien feet. The Hegemony crew had been rounded up into the central mess hall. They sat on the floor, huddled together, watching the breachers stand guard. The humans didn't yell, and they didn't mistreat them. They simply stood there like immovable statues of steel, their kinetic shotguns resting against their chest plates. But the real drama was happening outside. In the void, the 24 jagged human ships had formed a protective ring around the Xylos. However, the Galactic Hegemony was not a small empire. News of the incident had reached the nearest military outpost, and the Hegemony High Command had responded with terrifying speed. A flash of white light signaled the arrival of the Hegemony Justice Fleet. 60 sleek, golden warships jumped into the sector. These were not scavenger ships. These were the pride of the Empire, equipped with sunbeam cannons and phase shields that could phase through solid matter. On the bridge of the Xylos, Admiral Sarah Chun stood next to Captain Vrex. She wasn't holding a weapon, but she didn't need one. She watched the Golden Fleet surround her ships on the view screen. "Admiral," Vrex said, a spark of hope returning to his eyes. "That is the Justice Fleet. They are led by General Zog, the most decorated commander in the Hegemony. Your ships are large, but they are primitive. His beams will cut through your iron hulls like a hot wire through wax. Surrender now, and I might be able to save your crew from execution." Admiral Chin didn't even look at him. She adjusted her gloves. "Captain, you still think this is about technology. You think the shiny ship wins the war. You have forgotten the most basic rule of nature." "And what is that?" Vrex sneered. "The more beautiful the predator, the easier it is to kill," she replied. "Watch." General Zog's fleet didn't wait. They fired. 60 beams of concentrated solar energy slammed into the human ring. The space between the ships turned into a blinding sea of white fire. Vrex waited for the human ships to explode into dust. When the light faded, the Xylos crew gasped. The human ships were scorched. Their black paint had been burned away, revealing glowing red metal beneath. But they were still there. They hadn't used energy shields to block the heat. Instead, the ships had ablative scales. The outer layer of the ships had intentionally melted and fallen off, carrying the heat away from the core. They took the hit," Kale whispered from his station. "They didn't block it. They just absorbed it." Then the humans moved. "Initiate Cobra maneuver," Admiral Chen commanded into her headset. The human ships didn't fire lasers back. That wasn't their way. Instead, the front of each ship opened up like a giant mechanical mouth. From inside, they launched gravity harpoons, massive slugs of super-dense tungsten connected to unbreakable carbon cables. The Hegemony ships tried to use their phase shields. They turned invisible, hoping the slugs would pass through them. But the humans had anticipated this. The slugs were equipped with frequency jammers. As the slugs got close, they forced the alien ships back into solid matter. Asterisk crunch, asterisk. The sound was felt through the vacuum of space as vibration. The heavy tungsten slugs smashed through the golden hulls of the Justice Fleet. It wasn't a clean hole. It was a total structural collapse. The humans began to reel again. They pulled the beautiful golden ships toward them, slamming them into each other like a child throwing toys. It wasn't a battle. It was a demolition. General Zog's flagship tried to flee, but a human ship, the Iron Will, simply rammed it. The jagged prow of the human vessel buried itself deep into the side of the golden flagship. Human soldiers didn't wait for the airlocks to match. They blew holes in the alien hull and jumped across the gap in the vacuum. On the monitors, Vrex watched the internal feed of General Zog's bridge. He saw the unstoppable humans enter. They didn't use energy blades. They used breaching hammers. They smashed through the high-tech doors. They moved through the fire and the smoke as if they were born in it. General Zog, a massive creature with 3 arms and a crown of horns, pulled out his ceremonial energy sword. He swung it at the first human soldier who stepped onto his bridge. The soldier, a young woman named Miller, didn't even flinch. She caught the energy blade with a specialized glove sink that absorbed the power. Then she punched the general in the face with a hydraulic-powered fist. The general, the most feared man in the Hegemony, hit the floor and stayed there. Admiral Chen looked at Vrex. "Your General Zog fought for honor and glory. My soldiers fight for the person standing next to them. That is why you will never beat us. You fight for an idea. We fight for survival. Within 20 minutes, the Unbeatable Justice Fleet was a graveyard of broken gold and twisted metal. The human ships remained, scarred and ugly, but standing tall. Elias Thorne walked onto the bridge, carrying a small metal box. Admiral, I have the data. The Hegemony has a list of forbidden zones. It turns out, they've been hiding the existence of other death world species from their citizens. They didn't want anyone to know that the galaxy isn't as safe as they claim. The Admiral nodded. Well, the secret is out now. She turned back to the view screen. Hundreds of more human signatures were appearing. But these weren't warships. They were massive, blocky containers. What are those? Vrex asked, his voice broken. Supplies, Elias said, looking at the captain. We heard the Hegemony has been taxing the Outer Rim colonies into starvation. We're here to fix that. The rescue party had arrived. And they weren't just here to save Elias. They were here to save the galaxy from itself. The aliens finally realized the truth. Humans weren't the monsters in the stories. They were the heroes who had finally decided to stop hiding. The debris of the Justice Fleet drifted like glittering dust around the Xylos. What was once the pride of the Hegemony was now a graveyard of broken dreams and shattered gold. On the bridge, the atmosphere had shifted from terror to a heavy, stunned silence. Captain Vrex sat in his command chair, but he no longer felt like a captain. He felt like a witness to the end of an era. The massive human supply ships, the Great Barns, as Elias called them, began to move past the warships. They didn't head for the Hegemony capital. Instead, they began to drop thousands of small, automated pods toward the nearby colony planets, worlds that had been stripped of their resources by the Hegemony for centuries. What are you doing? Vrex asked, his voice hollow. Those are sovereign Hegemony territories. You are invading our planets with boxes. Admiral Chen looked at the monitors, watching the pods enter the atmospheres of the starving worlds. We aren't invading, Captain. We are disrupting. Your empire is built on the idea that you are the only ones who can provide safety and food. We are showing them that a myth from the void is much more generous than their own government. Elias stood by the tactical map, his helmet tucked under his arm. His face was smudged with grease and sweat, but his eyes were bright. The pods contain atmospheric scrubbers, high-yield seeds, and medical synthesizers. Everything your law forbade them from having. We're giving them the tools to be independent. And independent people don't need an empire. The true genius of the human strategy finally clicked in Vrex's mind. The humans weren't going to fight a 1,000-year war to conquer the galaxy. They were simply going to break the Hegemony's grip by making themselves more useful than the masters. They were winning the hearts of the galaxy before the first shot of a real war was even fired. Suddenly, a massive transmission overrode the bridge's main screen. It wasn't a local signal. It was a high-priority broadcast from the Hegemony High Council. The council members, the 12 elders of the oldest alien races, looked frantic. Their perfect robes were disheveled, and their voices overlapped in a cacophony of panic. Admiral Chen, the lead elder, shouted, "Cease your operations immediately. This is a violation of the Galactic Accord. We have mobilized the remaining sectors. 10,000 ships are heading for your position." Admiral Chen didn't blink. She didn't even stand up. She simply signaled Kale, the alien sensor officer, who was now working alongside a human technician. "Kale, show them the gift we found in their archives." Kale's fingers moved across the screen. He felt a strange sense of pride as he bypassed the Council's encryption. On the screen, a secret file appeared. It was titled Project Extinction. The file revealed a dark truth. The Hegemony had known about humanity for centuries. They had seen Earth's potential and were terrified of it. They had spent hundreds of years sending accidental asteroids and biological plagues toward the Sol system to try and wipe out the humans before they could reach the stars. Every natural disaster in human history had been a calculated hit by the Hegemony. "You tried to kill us while we were in our cradle," Admiral Chen said, her voice dropping to a dangerous, low whisper. "You sent fire and death to our home. And we thought it was just the universe being cruel. But we didn't die. We got stronger. We learned to survive the very things you used to try and destroy us." The council members went silent. The unstoppable nature of humans wasn't an accident. It was a monster of the Hegemony's own making. By trying to prune the human weed, they had turned it into an oak tree that could no longer be broken. We aren't here to destroy you, Elias added, stepping into the light of the transmission. If we wanted you dead, we wouldn't have brought supply ships. But the Hegemony, as you know it, is over. The void is no longer empty, and the rules no longer apply. Admiral Chun turned back to Vrex. Captain, I am releasing your ship. You are free to take your crew and return to your capital. Tell them what you saw. Tell them that the humans aren't just real, they're the new neighbors. And we brought enough bread for everyone, but we kept our hammers in case someone wants to skip dinner. The magnetic cables detached from the Xylos with a loud thrum. The human fleet began to pull back, forming a massive blockade around the void zone that now served as the doorway to a new, free territory. Vrex watched as the jagged, scarred human ships turned and vanished into warp, leaving behind a galaxy that would never be the same. He looked at Kale, who was holding a small, silver human ration bar. Kale took a bite and smiled. It was the first time Vrex had seen his officer look truly happy in years. Captain, Kale said, looking at the stars. I don't think I want to go back to the capital. Neither do I, Kale. Vrex whispered. The story of the unstoppable humans was no longer a myth. It was the first chapter of a new history. The galaxy had spent eons fearing the dark, only to realize that the things living in the dark were the only ones brave enough to bring the light. As the Xylos turned toward a newly liberated colony world, the last image on the screen was the blue and white marble symbol. It was no longer a sign of a dead planet. It was the flag of a species that had been pushed to the edge of extinction and decided to push back. The humans were real. They were here. And they were just getting started.